we were on page number 379, I
Yes, sir.
think. And we'll start the mind system, right?
Yes, sir.
Mhm. So, Meghna, please read.
Um, the mind system. Then Mahamati asked to the Blessed One, "Pray tell us what is meant by the mind, Chitta." The Blessed One replied, "All things of this world, be then seemingly good or bad, faulty or faultless, effect producing or not effect producing, receptive or non receptive, may be divided into two classes: evil outflowings and non outflowing good. The five grasping elements that make up the aggregates of personality, namely form, sensation, perception, discrimination, and consciousness, and that are imagined to be good and bad, have their rise in the habit energy of the mind system. They are the evil outflowings of life, the spiritual attainments and the joys of the samadhis and the fruitage of the samapattis that come to the wise through the self realization of noble wisdom and that culminate in the return and participation in the relations of the triple world are called the non outflowing good."
Mhm. So Buddha here says there are two kinds of mind, okay, or two kinds of people. First is evil outflowing. People who are outflowing, they are called evil, and they who do not flow outward, they who are not extrovert, are called good. So outflowing is evil, and non-outflowing is good. And what is not non-outflowing and what is outflowing, you learn in this. Yeah, the mind system.
The mind system, which is the source of the evil outflowings, consists of the five sense organs and their accompanying sense minds, which Vijna,
Vijnanas.
Vijnanas, all of which are unified in the discriminating mind, Mano Vijnana.
Mhm.
There is an unending succession of sense concepts flowing into this discriminating or thinking mind, which combines them and discriminates them and passes judgment upon them as to their goodness or badness. Then follows aversion to or desire for them and the attachment and deed. Thus, the entire system moves on continuously and closely bound together. But it fails to see and understand that what it is and discriminates and grasps is only a manifestation of its own activity and has no other basis. And so the mind goes on erroneously perceiving and discriminating differences of forms and qualities, not remaining still even for a minute.
Hmm.
In the mind system, there are three modes of activity distinguishable: the sense minds functioning while remaining in their original nature, the sense minds as producing effects, and the sense minds as evolving. By normal functioning, the sense mind grasps appropriate elements of their external world by which sensation and perception arise at once and by degrees in every sense organ and every sense mind, in the pores of the skin, and even in the atoms that make up the body, by which the whole field is apprehended like a mirror reflecting objects, and not realizing that the external world itself is only a manifestation of mind. The second mode of activity produces effects by which these sensations react on the discriminating mind to produce perceptions, attractions, aversions, grasping, deed, and habit. The third mode of activity has to do with the growth, development, and passing of the mind system. That is, the mind system is in subjection to its own habit energy accumulated from beginningless time, as for instance the I-ness in the eye that predisposes it to grasp and become attached to multiple forms and appearances. In this way, the activities of the evolving mind system, by reason of its habit energy, stirs up waves of objectivity on the face of universal mind, which in turn conditions the activities and evolvement of the mind system. Appearances, perception, attraction, grasping, deed, habit, reaction condition one another incessantly, and the functioning sense minds. The discriminating mind and universal mind are thus bound up together. Thus, by reason of discrimination of that which by nature is Maya like and unreal, false imagination and erroneous reasoning takes place. Action follows and its habit energy accumulates thereby, defiling the pure face of universal mind. And as a result, the mind system comes into functioning and the physical body has its genesis. But the discriminating mind has no thought that by its discriminations and attachments, it is conditioning the whole body. And so the sense minds and the discriminating mind go on mutually related and mutually conditioned in a most intimate manner and building up a world of representations out of the activities of its own imagination. As a mirror reflects forms, the perceiving senses perceive appearances which the discriminating mind gathers together and proceeds to discriminate, to name and become attached to. Between these two functions, there is no gap. Nevertheless, they are mutually conditioning. The perceiving senses grasp that for which they have an affinity, and there is a transformation takes place in the structure by reason of which the mind proceeds to combine, discriminate, apprise, and act. Then follows habit energy and the establishing of the mind and its continuance.
Yeah. So we have seen that this section is about the mind system. Okay. Rather than reading every line, I would like to explain the most important parts. And during study hours, you should go through each and every line, and you should try to comprehend this. And while going through, if you come across any question or any topic which is not clear to you, then you will make those points and you will ask me. Okay. So that will be our strategy now. Okay. So I'll be explaining the most important things. Otherwise, just reading, uh, this kind of stereotype. So we have to be creative enough and meaningful. Okay. So I would highlight the most important part. In mind system, Buddha says that there are two kinds of mind. One is outflowing and other is non-outflowing. So must note that Buddha doesn't say that introvert mind. He doesn't say introvert mind. He says non-outflowing. He says one is outflowing and other is non-outflowing. That doesn't mean that that mind flows inside. Okay, so you should be clearly and clear in this that mind should not flow inside because mind's nature is to flow outside. And when it doesn't flow outside, then that remains in rest, in peace. That doesn't mean that flow inside.
Mm.
Mind never flows inside. Mind always flows outside. Whatever you are thinking, whatever you are planning, whatever you are imagining, they all are related to outer world. Because you cannot think about inner world. You cannot think about you cannot imagine about inner world because in inner world that is empty. Okay, so mind always thinks, plans, and decides based on the external world. So while doing all these things, visualization, planning, think, mind during that moment thinks about the external things. So there are only two kinds of mind. One is outflowing, another is non-outflowing. Okay, so non-outflowing mind itself is called in yoga. Okay, so all the senses and discriminating mind are related to outflowing, and there is universal mind. Okay, in universal mind, there is absolutely pure mind that is clear of habit energy. This is habit energy which creates the waves on the face of universal mind. Okay, all the activities, evolvement, appearance, perception, attraction, grasping, deed, habit, reaction, condition. No, all these they are connected with sense mind, sensual mind, or discriminating mind. Okay, and the discriminating mind, because of its capacity to discriminate, judge, select, and reason about, is also called the thinking or intellectual mind. Okay, so even intellectual mind is also not pure mind. Intellectual mind is also not pure or divine mind. Uh, so one can be intellectual but cannot be pure, cannot be divine. So when discriminating mind judges, discriminates, selects, or gives logics, this is called thinking and or intellectual mind. So the bottom paragraph is By meditation as an examining function is meant that the intellectual act of examining into these general conclusions as to their validity, significance, and truthfulness. So this is called meditation. This is what Buddha Patanjali says, pramanam, praman, viparye, praman. Praman is kind of vritti. There are five vrittis of chitta. First is praman, is validity, significance, and truthfulness. Whether that is truthful, whether that is valid, that is significant. So this is the function of mind, and this is the faculty that leads to understanding, right knowledge, and points the way to self-realization. That's called klist and aklist. There are five vrittis, but they are of two types: klist and aklist. Klist means that which takes you to the to away from the self-realization of truth, that which takes you near to the self-realization. So that is arc. When you think, when you validate, authenticate, but that takes you to the reality is arc. Then Mahamati asks about what relation ego personality bears to the mind system. You know, the ego personality and the mind system. What is it? So in this answer, uh, Buddha replies that self nature of the five grasping aggregates that make up personality. Okay, five grasping aggregates. That is corporate, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These are five aggregates of personality. You can see Buddha says these five grasping aggregates are form, sensation, perception, discrimination, and consciousness. These are five grasping aggregates. And these five things make the personality. Okay. They are the aggregates of personality. Okay.
Yes.
What he calls ego personality. Buddha says they are even more Maya-like and dream-like. That is mortal mind. This is mortal mind. Discriminating mind is called mortal. So if you want to be immortal, then you have to rise from this. And this ego mind, ego personality, is like Maya-like and dream-like. There are things, nevertheless, as discriminating mortal mind, they obstruct the self-realization of noble wisdom. So this discriminating mind, mortal mind, intellectual mind is a hindrance to the self-realization of noble wisdom. Okay. But it is only by the ignorant that they are enumerated and thought as of an ego personality. But the wise do not do so. And this discrimination of the five aggregates that make a personality and that serve as a basis for an ego soul and ground for its desires and self-interest must be given up. See, desires and self-interests must be given up. And in its place, the truth of imagelessness and solitude should be established. So long there are desires, there are self-interests, one are in the cocoon of ego personality, and that creates a blockages that blocks the road to the enlightenment, to the realization of the truth. Okay, so Buddha says desires and self-interest should be given up, and in its place, the truth of imagelessness and solitude should be established. Instead of desires and self-interest, there should be the truth established. Truth of what? Imagelessness and solitude. Otherwise, there is no progress. There is just thinking and imagination and discriminations, but no footprint into the reality, into the truth. In the next question, Mahamati asked to the Blessed One about universal mind and its relation to the lower mind system. Okay, universal mind and its relation to the lower mind system. Universal mind and the lower mind system. Lower mind system is what? Lower mind system is uh, discriminating mind or intellectual mind. Okay, so Buddha replies, clarifying about universal mind and its relation to the lower mind system. He says the sense mind and their centralized discriminating mind are related to the external world, okay, which is a manifestation of itself and is given for over to perceiving, discriminating, grasping, and other things. Understood?
Yes.
The sense mind and their centralized discriminating mind are connected to external world. And further he says, universal mind is called alay vijnan, transcends all individuation and limits. Individuation. So long you are addicted in individuation and limits, you cannot reach to the universal mind. So universal mind transcends all these things. So the people who transcend the individuation and limits, they only reach universal mind. And universal mind is thoroughly pure and in its essential nature. Universal mind is thoroughly pure in its essential nature, subsisting unchanged and free from faults of impermanence, undisturbed by egoism, unruffled by distinctions, desires, and aversions. Universal mind is like a great ocean, its surface ruffled by waves and surges, but its depths remain forever unmoved. In itself, it is devoid of personality and all that belongs to it. But by reason of the defilement upon its face, it is like an actor and plays a variety of parts, among which a mutual functioning takes place and the mind system arises. So in sum, you understand just universal mind is the vast mind or the supermind or what you say, God or divine or nirvana, whatever you can say. So that is universal mind. Okay. And anything which takes you away from the universal mind is ego or ego-based things or individualities, individuation, or in other words, that is lower mind system. So we have to first overcome the lower mind system, then only we can come into connection with universal mind. Further, Buddha says, between universal mind and the individuation discriminating mind is the intuitive mind. Try to understand. So there is universal mind and there is individuation mind or individual mind. So there is always fight between these two. Individual mind always wants, is always selfish, is always self-centered, thinks about itself, thinks about himself, herself. Therefore, is always away from the universal mind. Because these lower desires, the lower faculties of the mind, what you call lower mind, pulls down. And universal mind in itself is always grandeur. Universal mind doesn't care about anything, doesn't care of anything. Because the universal mind is already enough. It doesn't need anything. And that is the storehouse of peace, that is the storehouse of bliss, joy. So this is discriminating mind, which always damages your joy, which always damages your peace. So to rejoice, to experience the peace, one has to come in contact with universal mind. But between universal mind and individuals and discriminating mind, there is one mind called intuitive mind. This is called intuitive mind. And all the gurus, all the masters are of what? Are like intuitive mind. So long a master talks about uh, universal mind or master persuades you to come in contact with universal mind or to release the individuation mind or the lower mind system, lower desires or craves. So that is the role of intuitive mind. Okay. So gurus are intuitive mind actually. But when gurus become silent or when masters become silent, then that master becomes universal mind. So long we speak, we are not universal mind. So long we behave, we are not universal mind. The moment we become absolutely silent, we are there. Okay. So further you will understand what is intuitive mind. So Buddha says the intuitive mind is dependent upon universal mind. Can you see? The intuitive mind is dependent on the universal mind and for its cause and support and enters into relations with both. So the intuitive mind is always intuitive. Intuitive means what? Intuitive means that mind always, whatever thinks is right, whatever perceives is right, whatever speaks is right, whatever guides is right. Because all these things come from where? From the universal mind, because that mind is always dependent on universal mind. For what? For its cause and support. So intuitive mind is dependent on universal mind for its cause and support and enters into relation with both. With both whom? With universal mind and with lower mind. So the intuitive mind has greater responsibilities that it has always to be rooted into universal mind and always to behave with the lower mind system. Okay, and it protects of the universality of universal mind, shares its purity, and like it is above form and momentariness. It is through the intuitive mind that the good non-outflowings emerge. See, we have understood that good, what is good? Good is non-outflowing. So intuitive mind, through intuitive mind, the good non-outflowing emerge and are manifested and are realized. So you cannot realize the non-outflowing mind without intuitive mind. So first we have to develop the intuitive mind. We have to overcome our lower mind through intuitive mind. Fortunate it is that intuition is not momentary, for if the enlightenment which comes by intuition were momentary, the wise would lose their wiseness, which they do not. Okay, so the enlightened one never loses its wiseness. Why? Because the wise mind is nothing but intuitive mind, and intuitive mind itself is always uh, rooted in universal mind. But the intuitive mind enters into relations with the lower mind system, shares its experiences and reflects upon its activities. Hope you're understanding. Intuitive mind is one with universal mind. See, Buddha says, intuitive mind is none other than universal mind. So always remember, a master or an enlightened one or wise one is none other than intuitive mind. And intuitive mind is none other than universal mind because they are one. And by reason of its participation in transcendental intelligence, Arya Jnana, and is one with the mind system by its comprehension of differentiated knowledge, Vijnana. Intuitive mind has no body, of its own nor any marks by which it can be differentiated. Universal mind is its cause and support, but is evolved along with the notion of an ego and what belongs to which it clings and upon which it reflects. Okay, clearly understand, and you must pay attention to my word, every word, then only you will understand. Okay, so further, Buddha says through intuitive mind, by the faculty of intuition, which is mingling of both identity and perceiving, the inconceivable wisdom of universal mind is revealed and made realizable. Like universal mind, it cannot be the source of error. So, intuitive mind never makes any mistake. Intuitive mind never produces any error, but discriminating mind or intellectual mind. Why? Because this is absolutely the universal mind. So, universal mind cannot be uh, the source of error. Okay, this is always the source of clarity, the source of righteousness, the source of wisdom, enlightenment. For this says the discriminating mind is a dancer and a magician with the objective world as his stage. Intuitive mind is the wise gesture who travels with the magician and reflects upon his emptiness and transiency. Universal mind keeps the record and knows what must be and what may be. It is because of the activities of the discriminative mind that error rises and an objective world evolves and the notion of an ego soul becomes established. Okay, so the discriminating mind is a source of error. You know what is discriminating mind? Is individuation mind. Individuation mind. Okay, if and when the discriminating mind can be gotten rid of, the whole mind system will cease to function and universal mind will alone remain. I repeat this, and you must try to understand. Buddha says, if and when the discriminating mind can be gotten rid of, the whole mind system will cease to function. Patanjali says that Chittavritti Nirodh, yoga is Chittavritti Nirodh. But how? So Buddha here clarifies clearly and elaborately. He says, when your discriminating mind, when you get rid of the discriminating mind, then the whole mind system will cease. So long there is discriminating mind or the individual mind or the lower mind, you cannot control the function of its activities. But when you will seize this, discriminating mind, what you say, the calculative mind or selfish mind or the individual mind or the lower mind, you have to get rid of that. You have to overcome that. And how to overcome? There are different techniques. Okay. First, willpower, you have to use your willpower. First, you'll have to overcome your habit energy. Because of your samskara, because of your habit energies, you come in that cocoon and you become victim of that. And when you damage yourself, then later on you realize that, yes, I have damaged myself. Then again, I have to stand up. You again stand up and again you try. But again, the negative karma comes on the way, that blocks the way, and things become wrong. Again, you suffer for some time. Then again you get up. So this is the process. Okay, but when you come in contact with the intuitive mind or the intuitive people, then you are always protected. You are always supported. You are always guided, and that is how you can get rid of them, and you will come in the field of universal mind. The last line Buddha says, getting rid of the discriminating mind removes the cause of all error. So the cause of all error, all mistakes, all nuisance is nothing but discriminating mind. It's clear? And then further, Mahamati asked to bless one that what is meant by the cessation of mind system. Then, you know, Patanjali says, control your mind. चित्त वृत्ति, चित्त की वृत्तियों का निरोध करो. बट कैसे निरोध करो? पतंजलि ने भी सूत्र दिए हैं. He has also given so many sutras, and he has said, practice pranayama, meditate on yathavimad do this, do that. And here Mahamati asked the same question to Buddha: how to control the mind, how to seize the mind, or what is actually the cessation of mind? And here Buddha replies, the five sense functions and their discriminating mind and thinking function have their rising and complete ending from moment to moment. They are born with discrimination as cause, with form and appearance and objectivity closely linked together as condition. The will to live is the mother, ignorance is the father. By setting up names and forms, greed is multiplied, and thus the mind goes mutually conditioning and being conditioned. By becoming attached to names and forms, not realizing that they have no more basis than the activities of the mind itself, error rises. False imagination as to pleasure and pain rises, and the way to emancipation is blocked. To emancipation is blocked. Then there is no further progress. The road is blocked. Buddha says the lower system of sense minds and the discriminating mind do not really suffer pleasure and pain. They only imagine they do. Pleasure and pain are the deceptive reactions of mortal mind as it grasps an imaginary objective world. So further he says two ways in which the seizing of the mind system may take place. So one is form, okay, form or the objects, sense objects. Another is senses. So when you break the connection between these two, we can break the system. Okay. So long they remain in contact, there is always exchange. There is always, the habit energy, the karma, the defilement on the face of universal mind. Defilement. Defilement? Defilement means the cover that covers, that, pollutes, that corrupts. That is called defilement. So the habit energy create the defilements, deed and habit energy, and then that blur the face of universal mind. So when we seize the sense mind or the defiling mind, discriminating mind, mortal mind, you seize the whole, mass of errors, mass of mistakes, mass of defilements. And so long there are defilements on the universal mind, you cannot experience the light, its light. Okay. But the cessation of the continuation aspect of mind system as a whole takes place when there is cessation of that which supports the mind system. Okay. That which supports the mind system, namely the discriminating mortal mind. With the cessation of mortal mind, the entire world of Maya and desire disappears. Are understanding? With the cessation of mortal mind, the entire world of Maya and desire disappears. Getting rid of the discriminating mortal mind is nirvana. What is nirvana? Nirvana is getting rid of the discriminating inferior, selfish, individuation, lower mortal mind is nirvana. Nirvana is not going somewhere or entering into after death into somewhere. But right now, right here, if you are rid of this mortal mind, this lower mind, you are in nirvana. So we don't have to just imagine, we have to be there. If we'll just imagine, or if we'll just think that yes, one day will come, then and I'll get rid of this and I'll go to nirvana, that never comes. You can be there right now, right here. Okay. But the cessation of the discriminating mind cannot take place until there has been a turning about in the deepest state of consciousness. Can you see this?
Learning.
Buddha says, but the cessation of the discriminating mind cannot take place until there has been a turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness. The mental habit of looking outward by the discriminating mind upon an actual objective world must be given up, and a new habit of realizing the truth within the intuitive mind by becoming one with the truth itself must be established. Until this intuitive self-realization of noble wisdom is attained, the evolving mind system will go on. But when an insight into the five dharmas, these three self-natures, and the twofold egolessness is attained, then the way will be opened for this turning about to take place with the ending of pleasure and pain, of conflicting ideas, of the disturbing interests of egoism. A state of tranquilization will be attained in which the truths of emancipation will be fully understood, and there will be no further evil influence of the mind system to interfere with the perfect self-realization of noble wisdom. Hope you're understanding.
Yes, sir.
So if you'll understand, then things become very clear, and we have to live the life with that understanding. And if you just learn, if you just read, and if you do not apply in our practices, then we'll not be benefited. Then we'll be just wasting our time. And all of your training will be waste. All of your money investment, time investment, energy investment will be waste. So you must implement this in your life, in your, what you say, mind and actions, thought, words, and deeds. Sometimes what happens, we understand, but we do not practice them because somewhere we do not have clarity about that. Somewhere we still cherish that notion of ego soul, that notion of inferior soul, that notion of, what you say, individuation. And you have clearly seen that. This is not my word. These are the words of Buddha. And if we apply this in our practices, then we are there. Where? In nirvana. Nirvana is getting rid of that kind of mind. Okay,